I think London is the city that New York pretends it is. Okay, well, Accenture are banned from any of our future contracts.
Mr. Howard Dawber, who is the Deputy Mayor of London for Business and Growth. What differentiates London a lot more in today's day and age?
There are 670,000 Londoners of Indian origin. You can't get in there now. You know, if all the growth goes to the top end of society, that's a real problem.
What does London mean to you?
There is no other city on the planet. Imagine if there was 7 first-class cricket teams in Mumbai. India's got a stable political system, emerging as a global economic superpower.
Which are 2 sectors that you think have the fastest or steepest growth curve?
Top designers like Gucci, they make leather from beer.
29% of FDI in 2023 was from India to London.
And what we don't have that Silicon Valley has.
You know, UK and India have signed a free trade agreement. How's that going to shape up? This show is brought to you by CRUDS, your partner in digital transformation. From cloud innovation to intelligent automation, we redefine enterprise growth, empowering organizations to shape the future with technology that thinks ahead. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the Innovators and Disruptors podcast. I'm Abhay Tandon, and I'm here in Bombay, in Mumbai, for a very interesting and exciting piece of conversation. And for that, I have someone very renowned who I'm going to be very, very shortly welcoming here as well. But before that, let me give you a little bit of a context, right? The India-London corridor has been growing over the years. We have recently signed the FTA as well, the free trade agreement as well between UK and India. And the partnership is getting deeper and deeper. And for this exciting conversation, may I now welcome Mr. Howard Dawber, who is the Deputy Mayor of London for Business and Growth, and also the Chair of London Partners, to the show. Thank you so much, Howard, for coming here.
Thanks very much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
No, it's our pleasure. You know, we're going to talk a lot about interesting stuff that's going on between the corridor, between India and London, between UK and India as well. And for that, there's no one better than you who can give us more perspective about how things are shaping up.
That's very kind to say, but yeah, I'll do my best.
Thank you so much. Howard, let me start by asking a very, very straightforward question. I think a lot of people want to understand this better, right? We've seen now that, you know, UK and India have signed a free trade agreement. How's that going to shape up the whole deepening of the partnership that's already shaping up so well?
Well, the first thing I'd say to people is read the agreement, because this is not the normal superficial FTA that, you know, the UK signed with a lot of countries, really rolling over the arrangements that were there before Brexit on a lot of cases.
Yeah.
It's also not the agreement that we signed with the USA, which is a good deal. I mean, it's a better deal than anybody else got, but it's still really just about reducing tariffs. This is a real partnership. This is a really serious deal. I think it's the deepest FTA that India's signed with anybody as well. And obviously, it predominantly covers physical goods.
Mm-hmm.
So it opens the UK market to Indian physical products, agriculture products, industrial products, and so on. And the Indian market to UK products more widely, you know, cars, whiskey, you know, all the great things that come out of the UK that we're very famous for, gin from London. But then it sets a framework for the expansion of services collaboration. And the services bit is obviously the bit that we're really interested in. London, 93% of London's exports are in the services sector. And it's the area where I think we can do the most collaboration together. So the framework for services, and that's exchange of people as well as exchange of products, and an opportunity for cross-border collaboration, which I think will lead to some really good businesses with one foot in each country.
Right.
I think there's a real opportunity here to grow. So have a look at it. If you're a business and you're looking to trade internationally, have a look at the agreement, because it opens a lot of doors that other agreements don't do. It's really quite exciting.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective as well. In fact, London and India partnership has been growing significantly as well. Over the last 3 years, the FDI from India to London has also increased further because of the value creation that's happening on both the ends, right?
Mm-hmm.
I read a stat that, you know, it says that 29% of FDI in 2023 was from India to London, right?
29% of the projects we work on, yeah.
Exactly, right. So that's showing how deep the partnership is developing, right? It's getting deeper and deeper, and with now the London Growth Plan coming into place as well, there's going to be a lot of impact on that as well. Will further grow and, you know, build deeper connections between both the countries. I mean, and specifically London and India as well. What are 2 or 3 key levers that you think is impacting this growth or it's helping, increase year on year as well?
Well, I think there's a few things. Obviously, trade between UK and India, trade between Mumbai, in fact, and Bangalore and London. It goes back obviously for centuries,
Right.
decades. So there's been a constant trade backwards and forwards of people and ideas and products and services. The What's happening now is obviously we're in an interesting, complicated geopolitical situation.
True.
What's happening in America is obviously destabilizing and changing things a lot. But also, you've got the emergence of new big players over the last 20 years. Obviously, China, importance of China, the role of the EU. UK now sits outside of the EU, but with a very good relationship with the EU, outside of USA, but with a very good relationship with the USA, and actually with quite a good relationship with China, a pragmatic relationship based on mutual benefit rather than we go into that with our eyes open. But that puts the UK in a unique global position. We have had elections last year, which means we now have a government for 5 years, a stable,
Right.
predictable government, and can't be said for quite a lot of economies around the world in terms of political stability. India's got a stable political system,
True.
and is emerging as a global economic superpower. So I think two stable countries have got a long history of trading together, where there's a real synergy between the huge market of India, the innovation in the Indian system, the tech sector in India, which is flying, and then the UK sector, particularly sort of financial technology, sustainable technology. We're producing products that are directly applicable to the Indian market. So there's
Right.
a lot of exciting collaboration going on. I think it's only going to grow. I mean, the other thing, of course, is that we share. I think we share a business culture.
Hmm.
We certainly share a language.
True.
I joked yesterday. One of the great things about London is that, like Mumbai, everyone speaks English.
Right.
We speak the same language, but it goes much deeper than that. There are 670,000 Londoners of Indian origin or Indian background, Indian family background. That's 2/3 of a million people.
Right.
We'd be one of the biggest Indian cities if we were a city just made up of that population. And that sense that when people come to London, it feels immediately like home. Unlike this, I come to Mumbai, it looks different, the food's different, the language is different, but underlying that, the business culture is very similar.
In fact, you've been working with a lot of scale-ups as well, right? From mayor's office as well. Uh, can you talk to us about one interesting success story of an Indian company who's now set up shop in London and how that's grown as well?
Well, there's a few to pick from actually, and obviously some that have grown really big. But I guess one that we worked on at London and Partners would be Deep Sights, which is a cybersecurity company. They work particularly against fraud, against ransomware and products like that. And they came via London and Partners into London. London and Partners is our inward investment agency and our business growth agency, so it does two things.
Right.
And our attitude is once you arrive, once you set up shop in London, we treat you like a London company.
Right.
And we want you to grow in London. So take on staff in London, take on more premises, get more business. So we will help you straight away to find customers and people to trade with. And London and Partners have been able to help Deep Sights get into some of those markets and expand their operation in London. So they're not a unicorn yet, but they're on the way. I mean, they've got a very good product that people are finding really, really useful, and that's a good example of how an Indian company with Indian innovation comes into the UK market and then develops their product using UK staff, working with UK clients,
Right.
into something that's then rather more firepower than they had with the original product coming directly from India. So I think the future for them is very strong. And again, they're now a company with strong office in the UK, a strong office in India, and potential to grow globally.
Exactly. Now it opens up a lot of market. It opens up access to a lot of tech talent, market, and so on and so forth, and capital as well, right? So it becomes much easier for the company to then grow globally as well.
Yeah, we may talk about capital later because that's one of my big issues that I'm working on at the moment.
Oh, is it? Okay, for sure. I also wanted to get into this, Howard. a lot of fintech CEOs who are now thinking about, I mean, everyone knows that, London is a very, very strong fintech hub, and so is New York, right? So
Mhm.
there's always a bone of contention when people are choosing between London and New York. What differentiates London a lot more in today's day and age as against New York when companies are, CEOs are deciding, fintech CEOs are deciding to set up shop in London?
Well, obviously I'm going to say come to London, but there's a good reason for that. Look, we love New York. I mean, New York and London in a lot of ways sister cities. There are great rivals. If you ask what is the capital city of planet Earth, up till 2016, it was London, no
Hmm.
question. And in fact, New York put out a whole survey and a statement about why is London beating us on everything.
Right.
What do we need to do to try and catch up? Bloomberg did a whole load of work with McKinsey on why is London winning. So we were winning. I would say post 2016, New York's had the edge on a few things.
Mm-hmm.
The latest ZYN index of where is the capital city of planet Earth has us catching up quite a lot. I would argue we are already ahead.
No.
That we are number one. New York would say we're number two, but we both agree we're in this competition together.
Right.
And also collaborating as well. There's a lot of collaboration goes on. But in terms of this international, where is the right place for an Indian business to come? And the Indian businesses look at also Dubai,
Mm-hmm.
Singapore, Netherlands, sometimes Paris, sometimes Dublin. As where are we going to put our first office outside of India?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I'd say London is this. We already talked a little bit about the culture, but from India to London is not that big a jump.
Right.
Culturally, it's very similar. It's very, very easy to set up a limited company in London, to get premises, to get support and advice. And this is the role that London and Partners plays to help Sherpa people through that process. But it is relatively easy.
Hmm.
And the regulation is predictable. It is I wouldn't say light touch, but it's not reactive and it's not prescriptive. So the regulation is conducive to innovation and conducive to people bringing new ideas. Not just the way London and Partners behaves, but when you step off the plane
Hmm.
in London, then you're treated very much as an equal. And people are like, okay, how can we do business? Rather than the suspicion and the concern and so on. It's easier, despite recent comments and some restrictions. It's easier to get a visa
Mm-hmm.
to work in London. So for business people that are coming to work in London for periods of time, that's an easier process. And then from London, it's then easier to do New York. And it's worth talking to, and I always say to people, talk to people who've done it. So talk to people who come to London and find out how they found that process. But also talk to people who've gone straight to the States and find out how that was for them. And some people, yeah, if you really run at it and you've got the resources and particularly if you've got American partners and advisors, then you can do it. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm not saying it isn't right for some businesses, but it's much harder. It is harder to go straight India, US, and whether that's New York or Silicon Valley, it is more difficult, and they are more likely to say, well, actually, if you're going to be serious here, we want you to move the whole business to US, set up a Delaware company, register for US tax, and so on. If you want to raise Series B, C funding in US, then they'll start to ask you to be part of
Right.
their system. Whereas the UK were like, no, it don't matter where your business is located. We want to do what we can in London. So I would say if you want to hit the US, if you want to crack the US market, do London first,
Makes sense.
because then you're in a much better shape when you go off to America, and that could be a very quick process as well. So we're a springboard for global growth. We also obviously have really good links into EU,
Mm-hmm.
which is a massive market in its own
True.
right, and then the whole Commonwealth from London. Obviously, India has that too, but from London going to Canada, going to Africa, some of the really exciting global emerging markets. That's an easy process. So London is a springboard, is what I'd say.
Fantastic. That's a very interesting perspective on calling this springboard. In fact, I realized that apart from ease of doing business, the common business culture. Very interesting point that came out was also the inclusivity angle, right? Because today, in today's day and age, that becomes a very important aspect because there are challenges globally that we're seeing around inclusivity as well. And like you mentioned, that becomes a much easier playground for people to come in and be a part of that environment.
Yeah, let's be very clear on this. When and I don't want to be too critical of our friends on the other side of the Atlantic, but when they started saying, "Oh, DEI rather,"
Yeah.
DEA is something else. That's the Drug Enforcement Authority, but they're also important. But DEI, when they said DEI is a dirty word, we're not going to do it anymore. That businesses that support DEI initiatives will be, will find it more difficult to get contracts with the US government. This is so anathema to the UK because diversity, equity, and inclusion isn't about special favors or treatment. It's about a level playing field.
Exactly. Yeah.
So this whole presentation of it as some sort of evil, anti-meritocracy agenda is totally wrong. And in fact, we've taken a very strong stance on this. When Accenture, and I'll name them, when Accenture said, right, we're abandoning DEI, our mayor, Sadiq Khan, who is obviously, comes from a Pakistani background. His parents came to London as immigrants, is very much reflective of London himself.
Right.
When he heard that, he said, "Okay, well, Accenture are banned from any of our future contracts, if that's their attitude."
Makes sense.
And so we're doubling down on it, and we think it's one of our huge strengths that you can come from anywhere in the world and you find a community, a supportive community in London of people, particularly who are doing business, and can support you in your globally, but also in that transition from if you're moving from, say, India to London. We have, like I said, nearly 700,000 people of Indian extraction, Indian DNA in London, and British Indians,
Right.
and in all walks of life, from obviously former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and we totally celebrate that. He wasn't our party, but you got an Indian, British Indian Prime Minister, through to some of the most important CEOs of some of the biggest businesses in the UK. The Indian community runs through everything like a stick of rock, and that's fantastic, and it's part of our strength. The other thing I'd say is when you look at things like life sciences. So at the moment, a lot of the models people use for developing drugs are based on data sets from various countries around the world. And the Swedish data set is one that people have used a lot of. And there's 8 million people in that data set, and they use that to develop drugs based on people's medical history. But there's not very much diversity in that Swedish data set. Our data in London is the most diverse on planet Earth.
That's fantastic.
London's health system has got the most diverse population. Over 99 different ethnicities, but at a statistically useful number.
Yeah.
So if you want Nepalese grandmas, we've got those.
Wow.
If you want North American, teenagers, we've got those as well. Everything you could possibly imagine, and that means that when you're developing products in London,
Right.
you can find. So, for example, if you want, we want to create a product, and we have to translate it into Italian, Spanish, Farsi, Ukrainian, Cantonese. Fine, that's easy. We've got people who'll do that. Native speakers will come and do that translation for you because they're there, and they'll be able to talk you through the cultural differences. So it becomes a really good sort of global test bed for products. And that is part of our strength, that our diversity allows us to act like a microcosm of planet Earth.
That's fantastic.
And one of the great things about the city.
That's amazing to hear, right? Because in India as well, we talk about the diversity in India as well, and to hear about the diversity in London, specifically for the kind of use case that you've spoken about, right? It's fantastic, right? Because a lot of development in the medtech space now relies on those data sets. So it's so fantastic to hear that in pharma and the medtech world. Uh, Howard, I'm just going to move on to another very interesting aspect, which is about the London growth plan. You co-authored that, and some of the initial targets are going to we're going to start seeing them materialize by 2028. So, what do co-founders of startups think about? How is this the by 2028, when some of these targets are going to be met? How is that going to change their on-ground experiences in London?
Well, I'm very proud of the growth plan that we put together, and was published in February this year.
Yeah.
And we worked with some of the most important founders, organizations, the tech organizations, people like London Tech Advocates Global, who you probably know, who understand how this will play out with an international group of founders as well as the founders in London.
Right.
So very proud of what we put together. It's got a 10-year timescale, so we're aiming at 2035 to achieve the main outcomes of the plan, which are to grow the economy by 20%. That's an extra £107 billion. So we're currently at $630 million. That takes up to $750 million as a city. Still not quite as big as New York, but getting there. To improve productivity growth back to 2% year on year. We're actually a very productive place, so more productive than other parts of the UK. But compared to some of our international competitors, compared to India, actually, our productivity growth hasn't been what we would have liked over the last 20 years. So that's actually a real challenge to get productivity higher. And that's about taking people up the value chain of jobs, really. So more better paid jobs and more productive industries for the number of people we've got in the city. And we're also looking to reduce poverty. So it's growth, but with a purpose, because if all the growth goes to the top end of society, then you've not really achieved anything for the city. You make a more divided city. So we're looking to improve the living standards and the income of the bottom 20% of Londoners by 20% over 10 years. So that's the long-term goal. It's an ambitious economic goal, because a lot of these things are dependent on the global economy, the UK economy. We don't have all the levers in our hands, so we know where we can go. The short-term objectives, we've got some one-year objectives that need to be done by next summer, and we're working very hard on those. And then we've got some objectives by 2028. So one of the 2028 objectives is to create 150,000 new good quality jobs in London, and we define those as paying a good salary, having good prospects, being in the growth sectors, and we're well on our way to achieving that. Actually, we're going to put out some numbers later this year to show how we're on track for that. And then the first year objectives, we are just about at the end of October to publish our talent strategy, which is, and obviously you are an innovator and a disruptor yourself. So we're doing a new thing. We're looking at the talent pool of London as if we were the HR department of the city.
Fantastic.
So what do we need? What do our people need to get better jobs? How do we improve the jobs that people have currently got? But where are the gaps where we need to bring in new talent to fill those gaps? And how can we grow those talented people internally? And in some cases, bring them in from outside. Yes, immigration. Some skills, don't exist in our city. We bring them in, and then we use those skilled people to train up our people as well. So that's talent strategy will be out at the end of October, and that's going to be really quite innovative and really turning around the whole skills development system, which is partly under our control at the Mayor's office. We have a £350 million a year skills budget that's under the Mayor. It was really about adult skills. We've got co-ownership of the 16 to 19 skills system in terms of the content and the direction of travel of skills for younger people. And then we're working closely with the higher education sector on higher education skills. So that's going to be one big. It's not an outcome; it's an output. So it's an input really. It's a strategy for sorting the skills out. The second thing we're looking at is a new plan of infrastructure. So we've got 3 or 4 big transport projects we want to get underway. And we're hoping for some positive news from central government to allow us to go ahead with one of those projects in November this year, which is the DLR extension to Thamesmead, which is connecting a whole part of East London into the network, and building a new town there as well. So that's housing, which is a crucial part of how the city is going to accommodate growth, is by building new housing for people, and then looking at the physical infrastructure like power. So we need to double the power capacity of London over the next 10 years. And that's a massively tall order. We need to improve the transmission and distribution of energy. We need to look at actually what we can do to generate stuff ourselves. So some renewable generation within the city. but also buying in new capacity from outside. So there's a big. Nobody's ever looked at it this way before. Nobody's ever planned ahead in this way before. So big infrastructure plan to start, and looking for international investment into that as well to help deliver that. And the great thing about power is you can make money out of it.
Of course.
I mean, electricity costs in London are very high at the moment, so
Okay.
power is expensive. If we can get those numbers down a little bit, and that will easily help people pay for the infrastructure over time. It's a big investment up front, but there's lots of opportunity there to invest. And the other things we're doing in the first year, we've got an innovation plan that we're putting together to look at how we foster innovation as a city. We were the first city to have a chief technology officer and chief innovation officer, Theo Blackwell. He's currently on loan to central government, so he's been with central government since the new government came in, and he's coming back to us now with lots of new ideas, and having played a big role in how the government sees innovation, and the national government's own industrial strategy, which they've put out, which mirrors our growth plan very nicely. So there's a lot of things underway that we want to see some tangible outcomes by the end of the first year, which takes us to spring summer next year.
Fantastic. That's amazing, right? With this kind of clarity on the KPIs and targets that you have in place for now, for the first year, as well as now by 2028 as well. In fact, you spoke about some of the challenges as well, right? I wanted to also touch upon that, right? You spoke about skills, which I'm assuming by your conversation, of course, I've read some of these things as well. The skill development is one of the areas that's closer to your heart. There's infrastructure, there's capital inflows, and there are a few other areas commercial space, planning cycles, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Are there any areas which are a big challenge at this point in time?
Well, I'm going to be glass half full, because obviously one of the things we did in the plan was, what are the things we need to change? So we concentrated on things where we thought there was a problem, and we've got some challenges there, some gaps to fill. But let's start with, so for example, on money, we are probably the third best place in the world to raise money for a scale up in a startup, but we're quite a long way behind New York and quite a long way behind Silicon Valley. And one of the things we found is that some of our businesses, when they get to Series A, but Series B and C, particularly funding rounds, a lot of the money is going to come from US rather than from UK, because our pool's just not big enough. And what we don't have that Silicon Valley has is that big pool of founders who've made their billion, and then become a very entrepreneurial and innovative investor looking for the next big thing. So we have some of that. We have 124 unicorns out of London. So we've got some people with money, but we are tiny compared to where Silicon Valley is. Now, what that means, it's great that American money comes in. That's fantastic. But it comes sometimes with strings attached. They say, oh, come over to Palo Alto, hang out with us, set up your company in the US, and we'd like you to be part of the US tax system, because that helps
Delaware
us with
C Corp.
Sorry?
The Delaware C Corp.
Yeah, exactly. The Delaware C Corp. We want you to be in the system because it helps us. And then before you know it, they've gone, well, actually, we're going to now shift some of our primary operations to USA. And that, fine, great for them, but that's not good for London, because we want to be growing those companies in London.
For sure.
The next Meta, the next Google, the next X, we want that to come out of London. Now, we've got a few really big businesses like Revolut, one of the biggest challenger banks globally, like Deliveroo. We've got some really, really good success, TransferWise, some really good success stories out of London. But we want more of those. So plugging that gap is one of the things that's very high on my list. We've actually got a lot of space. There's a very low vacancy rate in the City of London right now, partly because there's a lot of buildings being demolished and then rebuilt as green. So there's a sustainability challenge where if you don't meet certain sustainability criteria in terms of the operation of your building, you won't be allowed to lease it out by 2030. So that's really concentrated people's minds. There's a lot of things being knocked down or completely refurbished, taken back to shell and core and completely rebuilt. and that means there's a low vacancy rate. But across the rest of London, there is space.
True.
But there's also a lot of people looking for space, and somehow that's not quite marrying up in the way it should. And again, this is not to say that London isn't a great place to find space, because it is. And it's a buyer's market at the moment for space. But we want to make sure that all the space is in use for the next generation of startups and scale-ups, and that people can easily find a space to move into, and crucially then a place to grow without having to keep ending leases and paying to get out of leases and moving to a new lease. So one lease that allows them to grow from 2 people to 200 people.
Right.
So we're working with developers and landowners on that. Talent, we are the number 1 place in the world for talent, according to surveys. Objective surveys by people from outside London, rather than us saying it. We have 68% of our working population. 68% are graduates. 68% of the workforce. There's nowhere like that on planet Earth. It is extraordinary. We have got some of the most talented people, and compared to New York or Silicon Valley, for example, if you're looking for an AI PhD developer, you're paying half the salary in London for what you pay in New York, which is a huge advantage to us. Where we need to do more work is in the technical skills that support that. So the people who've got the technical skills to, for example, lab technicians, and businesses in London have told us repeatedly that some areas of the workforce they can get exactly who they want. They're spoiled for choice. Other areas really hard to find people.
Right.
I was talking to a scale up that's actually a sustainability scale up. They make leather out of the leftover product from beer manufacturing. So the husks of the grain, where they've taken all the sugar out of it, the husks, which are very, very high in fiber, they originally thought there was a medical application for this, but when they started spinning this stuff out and seeing what they could make out of the fibers of the husks, they got a leathery substance, and they were like, wow, it's actually pretty good. So they now make, they're working with top designers like Gucci on a completely vegan, completely animal-free, cruelty-free, carbon-positive leather alternative. And it's not a plastic. It is an organic material made out of plants. Now, they were like, right, we're ready to go into production on this. We need to put together the machinery that will then roll this stuff out in big quantities. So they were looking for a systems engineer, a manufacturing systems integrator. So a person that had experience of setting up manufacturing processes. It took them 2 years to find them. Now, in India, incidentally, would not take you 2 years to find that person, because there are lots and lots of people doing that job right now. But in London, actually, we haven't had people do that job for a little while, because a lot of the factories and manufacturing, moved to other parts of the UK or out of London. So it's areas like that where, as we get into the advanced manufacturing, particularly of sort of small batches, prototypes, pharmaceuticals, the personalized drugs and stuff, where actually it does make sense to manufacture those in London. We need to sort of rebuild our talent base in the industrial processes that deliver that, because we've got a gap. Right. So meeting those gaps and being responsive to what employers want is one of the key challenges that we're working on now. So money, space, and skills are not that we don't have them, but those are the areas we want to concentrate on. The one area that I have absolutely no worries about at all is IP. We are generating phenomenal ideas. We are a huge ideas factory. We are churning out brilliant, concepts at an astonishing rate. Capturing those and turning them into businesses is the challenge for me, because I've got, we do not have an ideas problem. In fact, possibly the opposite. We've got too many ideas.
So the incubators, the accelerator models will now step in a lot more, I'm assuming, in the next stage.
Exactly. So, and we've actually got, that's growing very rapidly as well. So Imperial College, you've got a fantastic accelerator taking products out of there. out of the university, but also other universities as well, providing a scale up space for them. We've just launched a quantum accelerator around the what we call the London Quantum Cluster, which is partly funded by the mayor.
Yeah.
So the mayor putting his money, our money, directly into supporting the development of quantum technology in London.
I'm aware of this because I've also invested in a quantum computing startup from India.
There you go.
So they are scaling up fairly well. They have some global clients now.
So that's very exciting. I opened actually here's another quantum accelerator that's linked to Northeastern University, US University, who've got a campus in London. I opened one of those 2 weeks ago, and they're focusing on quantum tech as well. So in sustainability, in fintech, my old shop, Canary Wharf Group, has level 39, which is now venerable, 12 years old, which is a long time, very old now in fintech terms. That's what's that, 84 years in tech years. But we've got that sector is one that we really want to nurture, because the ideas to business is one of the crucial steps that we want to support.
So on this, if I may ask you this, right, in the near term, what are two sectors? And I know that, in London, there's so many different areas and sectors which are going so well, right? You spoke about climate tech, you spoke about quantum, you spoke about cybersecurity, fintech, of course, and health tech, med tech.
Yeah.
Which are two sectors that you think have the fastest or steepest growth curve that you can see from in the next 1 year?
So steepest curve. So there are a whole load of sectors in the growth plan. There is tech, including deep tech. There is health and life sciences. There is sustainable tech and sustainable technology. There is the creative sector. Actually, international education as a sector is quite a big sector for us as well, growing rapidly. And then what we call the experience economy, which is sport, music, events, all the things you can't download that you have to physically be there for. So tourism's in there, and that's growing really rapidly as well. But if I had to pick two, I'd say in London, the ones I would have a close look at are the sustainable side, because we really reached a tipping point a couple of years ago. It had been seen by a lot of people as, a necessary evil, a cost on business, all the sustainability stuff, the transition to net zero, and we've got to do it, but we're not necessarily very enthusiastic about it. And we reached a tipping point where people started to see, actually, this is starting to make us money, and starting to open up opportunities around the world,
right,
to be a pioneer of whatever part of the sustainable journey we're on, whether that's new materials or recycling or energy generation or energy use, or indeed the financing behind making it pay, carbon capture and storage, for example. Suddenly it's become a big growth area, and that's very exciting. So it's 25% of our FDI last year was into that sector.
Okay.
So that's growing very rapidly, and some amazing businesses. Another one I might mention, Notpla, and they use seaweed, which has a really positive carbon footprint when it grows in the sea. So it sequesters a lot of carbon as it grows. So it's already carbon positive by the time you get it. And they turn that into a plastic-like material, like a cling film, which can be used either as a manufacturing, as a containment product in its own right, as a sort of bubble, or you can use it to line cardboard to make a completely 100% biodegradable container for food. So if you were at Wimbledon this year, all the strawberries and cream were in those containers. The London Marathon, the water was in their containers. And they are getting people very excited around the world because it's the only one. So there are lots of people who say, we're using recycled plastic, or, our product is recyclable, but this is completely biodegradable, food safe packaging, and it's not significantly more expensive than the current paper and plastic alternative. So they are poised for growth. So that sector, 100%, very exciting. The other one I talk about is health and life sciences. So we have historically been a real centre of innovation and research in health and life sciences, but we weren't really developing that into a into the business sector that we should have done. So, historically, people look at Boston, actually Bern a bit, around Switzerland, but in the USA also Texas, obviously Silicon Valley, and so on, around the big hospitals, around the Cleveland, around the Mayo Clinic, etc.
Right.
We are rapidly going up that list. So from a position of being about 20th in the world, we think we're about 6th as a cluster, just London. We're also obviously very close to Oxford and Cambridge, which
Right.
are effectively suburbs of London. I mean, in Indian terms, they'd be regarded as suburbs.
Hmm.
They are an hour's travel
Right.
out. It's an hour's drive to Oxford on a good day, I should say. We've got a train that gets there in an hour. We've got
Right.
a train out to Cambridge, 45 minutes. So that golden triangle is now certainly European, the predominant cluster. London is emerging as the biggest part of that. 6 million square feet of lab space under construction in London right now. And we're the only city in the world that has 5 world-class teaching hospitals and universities combined.
Right.
2 of those in the top 10 universities in the world. So again, back to IP, that IP is coming out, but we're building clusters around it of space for the businesses to scale up into. So, and back to the data. And we haven't even codified all that data yet. So and there's a program underway to do that. Once we've codified that data into a readable format that we can then start licensing out to people to base their models on, I think London is going to light up even more than it already is. So it's a very, very fast growing sector.
Fantastic. So people who are listening to us right now, and specifically Indian entrepreneurs who want to be based out of London, they should look at climate sustainability tech and health and med tech as well, right?
Yeah,
These
well,
are
they
two
should. I
spaces.
mean, look at all the sectors in the growth plan. The experience economy, which really, very interesting, it really genuinely came out of consultation because it wasn't on our list of the sectors we thought we were going to concentrate on. We did consultation on the plan, and more people said, "Oh, you really need to look at what's happening on the entertainment and sports side."
Yeah.
We are short of another 25,000 seat stadium. So we've got 4 world class stadia that host major events as well as football. Not that football isn't a major event, but you know what I mean. Big music events. So we had Taylor Swift last year did 10 nights in London, more than any other city in the world because
Right.
London's a great place to do it. We've got the O2 Arena, which is 25,000 seats. You can't get in there now. It's booked up for 3 years in advance. If you want to do a tour, you go there and say, well, yeah, we can book you in for 2029. That's a real problem.
Right.
It's actually meaning people can't start or end their tours in London if they're in the 25,000 seat space. So we need another one of those.
Right.
There's demand for it right now. So we're looking at where we can put one.
Isn't London also one of those
thing.
cities where you have the maximum number of football teams?
We do. We have 7 Premier League teams right now. Chelsea, Arsenal, Tottenham, West Ham, Crystal Palace, Brentford, and Fulham. And then we've got more in the Championship, in League One, in League Two. There is no other city on the planet that has 7 teams at the top level of its national sport.
Exactly.
It's like, imagine if there was 7 first-class cricket teams in Mumbai.
Exactly.
And Mumbai could probably cope with that. But then on top of that, we've got Twickenham, the home of rugby, and obviously our women just won the World Cup, which is fantastic because our men aren't winning very much at the moment. We've got the Oval, and then Lords, home of cricket. We've got Wimbledon, the home of tennis. And that's on top of all the other things that happen in London on a weekly basis. Any one night, there's about 30 sporting events that you can go and pay for in London. Any night of the week.
Wow.
There's nowhere else like that. So that's huge. We sell more tickets than anywhere else. We've got American football in London this week. So they're playing NFL league games in London. So 2 teams come over and play. We've had the Jacksonville Jaguars a few times now, almost a second home for them. Those games sell out in like 30 minutes.
Right.
People fly in from all over Europe to come watch those games. So that's a huge sector. And it's not just the bums on seats, the ticket sales. It's all of the planning, the screens, the technology, the ticketing, the hospitality, all the sports science that goes along with that. This is a big industry employing tens of thousands of people. and generating real innovation that then is being used around the world. A lot of the Paris Olympics was actually delivered by London-based companies who cut their teeth on the London Olympics and then have gone on to, for example, all the temporary stadium design was done by and delivery was done by London business. A lot of the hospitality and ticketing was done by London businesses. So we've developed this real niche of being able to organise and manage big sporting events. And there's a lot of technology goes into that.
Right.
That's then applicable to other sectors too. So look at the growth plan, because you may find that there's areas in there that some of your subscribers and fans will find attractive.
Yeah.
But for me, the two with perhaps the steepest curves are health and life sciences and sustainable.
Fantastic. Howard, thank you so much for these amazing responses. In fact, I know you're running late, so we're going to get into rapid fire. Few very interesting questions that we wanted rapid answers on. Just on top of your mind, whatever you think, do give us that.
Okay.
You have developed Canary Wharf, right? It's on the global map. Everyone talks about it. So many people, millions of people have benefited from that, right? If you had to change or reverse one decision of building out or any specific aspect of Canary Wharf, what would that be?
If I had to change one decision, then I would have probably diversified earlier. So Canary Wharf spent the first half of its life just doing office space, and then ancillary retail and food and beverage and other products to support the office space. With hindsight, I think we probably could have gone into residential a little bit earlier, and we should have gone and done Canary Wharf in other cities.
In one word, what does London mean to you?
Oh gosh, London opportunity. I mean, I'm not a Londoner by birth. I'm a Londoner by osmosis and by choice. Like a lot of Londoners, actually, originally came from somewhere else, or parents came from somewhere else, or grandparents came from somewhere else. So I chose London, and it's been everything. It's given me everything in my life. Massive opportunity, but I'd say it's also a city where anything's possible. I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it. I think London is the city that New York pretends it is.
Ah, nice. Very interesting. Very cool.
It is a city where anyone can make it and anything is possible.
Very cool. A book or podcast you'd recommend to founders?
Gosh, well, obviously this podcast I'd recommend to founders.
Thank you.
So I'd recommend to founders who aren't in India to watch this. I guess I'd also, do you know who's very good? And a lot of people watch him in the UK is Stephen Bartlett, The Diary of a CEO. So he does a podcast like this, interviewing people with quite often quite a contrarian take on things. So looking at things from a different angle and looking at recently quite a lot of sort of future facing big ideas. That's quite good. Book, I would probably say, for a founder, probably From Zero to One, Peter Thiel's book with Masters. And the central message of that book, you should still read the book, but the central message is, don't worry about the numbers, worry about the ideas. Concentrate on the ideas and the numbers will come. If you concentrate on the numbers, you'll forget what the point of the business is. But yeah, that's a good book for founders.
One last one. Complete the sentence. In 5 years, the London-India corridor will be?
Rocking.
Fantastic.
Rocking. It'll be rocking with activity.
Thank you so much. I hope you like the masala chai. If you had to choose between the Indian masala chai or the old tea?
No. Masala chai every time, preferably with condensed milk. So like you get at a roadside cafe where you can stand the spoon up in it. That's what I want.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Howard, for sharing such amazing perspectives, giving us so much of context around how the growth plan is going to work out. Also, for a lot of entrepreneurs to now set up shop in London, a lot more than they're already doing. So it was fantastic for us to understand a lot more deeper, get a lot more deeper context and understand a lot more opportunities.
Thank you. And next time you're in London, come and see us. There's some amazing people in London that you really ought to meet.
Definitely will look forward to that. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.